addiction, prevention, recovery.
Welcome to the Recovery Rebirth Podcast.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Recovery Rebirth Podcast. I'm Dominic.
And I'm Jillian.
Welcome, audience. Today's topic is about relapse prevention. So, a topic that comes up quite often in the recovery arena. I don't know if you hear it so much in your circles, but I hear it an awful lot in my circles with substances and people in the legal system and therapy. Relapse prevention is a common topic. Do you hear about it often?
So, not so much because, again, in my world, the meetings I attend are more for people who have problems with other people's addictions, like substance abuse and alcohol use disorder, those kinds of things. So relapse, not that it can't happen, because it certainly can. Codependent relapse can happen, or, other kind of more process addictions, but it's not really discussed. So I'm going to lean on you, my friend, for the resources, because this one's not, it's not something we really delve into in my branch of recovery.
Well, I bet that after we go through some of this material and discuss it a little bit, you'll find that a lot of it applies.
Yes.
Even though you take the word alcohol or drugs out of it, and it still applies.
Yes.
Because relapse is not just about substances. So the first thing about relapse is the mental or emotional, and those two are somewhat separate. But emotional usually is the first stage of relapse when you're getting ready to have a problem, emotional relapse. And I've been guilty of this stone cold sober, having an emotional relapse.
Right. What's that look like?
Well, anxiety, irritability, anger or quick to anger, defensiveness. I have dealt with mood swings, that, I'm in a great mood and then I'm in a lousy mood, or I'm feeling sorry for myself. I get the pity pot going. Not going to as many group meetings as usual.
Yep.
Self-care goes down the toilet. It's a big issue, and self-care goes down and you just are not eating right, not sleeping right. Those kind of things.
So that, like you said, I mean, even though I don't struggle with addiction to substances or food or drugs or alcohol, but when I was really sick in my codependency and my maladaptive coping mechanisms born out of that, I would feel those things like the anxiety and the lack of self-care. When the person I loved was struggling with their drinking, then I was struggling, right? Because I was so fixated on them not being sober and what they might do in a drunken state that it robbed me of my peace, and then I started to go downhill too. Even though I wasn't personally wasn't withdrawing from an addiction to a substance, withdrawal from addiction to a person is really, really rough. It's really rough. And I can have codependent slips and even relapses, and so a way that I kind of gauge my sobriety or just, being healthier is if I'm filled with resentment, then I know I'm falling into that, slip relapse. I could easily backslide into that.
So when an anger turns into a resentment, an angry moment turns into a resentment, and you're going over it in your mind, that is the second phase of relapse, which is the mental part. Because now you're holding on to it.
Yeah.
I know I'm guilty of that over time, where I've let something get to me. And whether it be anger turning into a resentment, or a brief worry turning into a fear, those kind of things, then you're mentally relapsing. Now, luckily for me, I have not physically relapsed.
Yeah.
I've been quote unquote sober since I came into a program of recovery. Part of that in the beginning, of course, was a healthy fear.
Yeah.
A healthy fear of not going backwards kept me, sober in the beginning, to stay away from any substances, because I knew it was going to lead to nothing but more pain and suffering. But the physical relapse is when people go back to using, and the difference between a relapse, a real relapse, and a slip is often discussed in the 12-step community, certainly.
Yeah. So explain that for us.
Well, a slip, would be you're early in recovery and you use a substance again, whether it be drugs or alcohol. So that's a slip because you really haven't had a relapse. You're 2 weeks sober and you use again. That's not really a relapse because you haven't hopefully
established your sobriety fully.
Right. So that would be more of a slip.
Okay.
A relapse might be after a sustained, successful period of recovery, you go back to old behaviors and end up using. So that would be a full relapse.
Gotcha.
If you're a week sober, everybody's bipolar, everybody's losing their mind,
Right.
Everybody's emotionally all over the place. I know I was,
Right.
quote, half crazy for months into early recovery.
So it seems, and I've heard this before from people in sister programs or that do deal with the actual addiction or struggling with substance use disorder, because I have people that come into my meetings because there are a lot of people that struggle with codependency because they grew up in a family system where there was alcoholism or drug addiction or other kind of things going on. And for a long time, I honestly thought my ex, who struggled with alcohol, might benefit more from Al-Anon or from a program that focused on the roots of it, because it seems like when you remove the substance that people use to numb out, if it is alcohol or drugs, underneath we're so much the same. And for me, I never turned to the substances. It was always like a man who had a dysfunction, and in one case it was alcohol that was. But I feel like the structurally, like the emotional structure of it all underneath is, we were all struggling with very similar things, and we just use different ways. I remember, I probably have shared this in an episode, my ex and I went to a therapist who specialized in addiction recovery at one point, and I remember him saying to us, he's like, when he's active in his addiction, he feels good and he's numbing out, and when you're active in your addiction, you're miserable. Because there is no, that was the thing. I'm like, yeah, I am freaking miserable because I'm obsessing about him and his drinking, and if he's contacting his ex behind my back and all that. There was no reprieve for me when I was active in my ugly, codependent, obsessive, resentful, being a martyr, victim, whatever. So
let me ask you a question. This just sparked a question.
Sure.
Because it can be tough to relate back and forth, and our job is to try to eliminate some of those barriers to relating.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're right, by the way, on, if you get to the root, the root causes, and we'll talk about that in a minute, are similar. Take drugs and alcohol out of it and, people, places, things, whatever.
Yeah.
But when a person relapses, in your end of things, what do you do to cope? Because an alcoholic will drink, and
Right.
it's like, okay, I'm going to go back to my medication, which is alcohol, to kill this feeling that I'm having that I don't like having. So what does a person, like yourself do?
So my relapse many times is like you going back to a dysfunctional relationship where that person clearly hadn't done the work to be a healthier person, then we'd get stuck in that same ugly dysfunctional cycle. And again, it's weird, and trying to parse out why would I do that when there's really nothing, I'm not numbing out, I'm not being there's no temporary vacation from my pain and suffering because I'm numbing out with alcohol or drugs. But there was, for me, it's because of that, it's that fixation of wanting to rescue or fix this other person, ooh, here's another chance to try to do that, which is a distraction from me working on things that I really need to work on. So I guess, that's sort of my version of it, because I've done it many times. I've had multiple relationships where I've gone back to that same, I'm like, weird, I'm still resentful and angry and hurt and all these negative things, odd.
But it'll be different this time.
Somehow it's going to be different this time. That's the definition of insanity, right? But I think the solution, whether it's for me, like someone who struggles with these addictive relationships or somebody who struggles with a substance, the solution is going to meetings, getting a sponsor, connecting with other people who are who have similar struggles and supporting each other through that recovery process so that we can consciously choose different ways of coping with our pain so that we're not just on autopilot and reverting back to these very reflexive patterns.
Right. I gotcha. So you'll relapse on people.
That's what I do. I relapse on people. Some very sexy, messed up men. There's some similar root causes of relapse, and they're pretty common no matter what your drug of choice or thing of choice is. Mm-hmm. And stress is a big one. Yes.
When total. I don't just mean temporary stress, like something, you mm-hmm. get a flat tire, that's temporary for an hour or two. But I'm talking about stress that lasts for a while. You're having a sustained period of stress, mm-hmm. and that can lead to a relapse if you're not able to blow off steam in a healthy way, mm-hmm. To be able to get that pressure released. Boredom is another one on the other end of it. Yep. So stressed on one side, and on the other side of the pendulum is total boredom, like I have nothing better to do than. And then money problems. A lot of people in recovery have money problems. Yeah. And that can be a big one that sends people back out. And I've dealt with financial issues, still dealing with financial issues, mm-hmm. but I don't let it become a crippling factor. I mean, I have my moments. Uh-huh. Don't get me wrong. Sure. I am not perfect. I have my moments. And I'll be really depressed about it sometimes, or I'm not where I want to be, mm-hmm. those kind of things. But I get past that and keep going, keep mm-hmm. pushing forward. Relationship issues, as you just mentioned, is a huge one to trigger relapse. And I was just talking to somebody the other day about this. Two people came into recovery together, and you can't do recovery together. Recovery is for you as a person, for you. Recovery for me is as a person, for me. We can't go into recovery together, right. Because I can't work your program, you can't work mine. We have to work it for ourselves. But relationship issues, if you're dealing with a person, let's say, who one person wants to stay sober and the other person doesn't really care or is not committed to it, mm-hmm. That can cause problems. Or people break up because now you're not the same mm-hmm. messed up person that I hooked up with.
Right, right.
I don't like this, that you're feeling sober and you're getting your life together. I can't control you anymore. Whatever.
I never got to experience that.
And then, of course, the most common that we hear in the addiction world is people, places, and things. Mm-hmm. So certain people can trigger a response. Mm-hmm. Certain places can trigger a response. Certain things can trigger a response. You know what's funny? Ironic funny.
Yeah.
I'll be watching a movie and people are drinking, and I'm thinking, boy, am I glad I don't do that.
Yeah.
But see somebody doing drugs, uh-huh. and sometimes I'll get like a little twinge, a trigger. It's just very strange. Not like I want to use, but it's just like, I remember what that felt like.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that in our episode on triggers. Check it out, people. I'll put it in the show notes because we just did an episode on triggers, actually. Yes, that is interesting how one but not the other. And luckily it hasn't caused you to relapse. But I did want to say, when you were mentioning, let's say like a couple going into recovery together, because that can be problematic. And I started my recovery, a while before my ex started his, in my assessment, sort of like half-assed, like I think he was just doing it to appease me. But at any rate, so staying focused on my program and minding my own business and keeping my hands off his program. But I do want to say that recovery is very much, it's a we thing, but not with our romantic partner. Like recovery is not something to be done alone, but the we is other peers, the person we're not dating or romantically involved with. Like it's very much a we program. But if you're in a romantic relationship with somebody and you're both in recovery, it is really important to focus on your own and not their program or their recovery.
Precisely. Thank you for clarifying that.
Sure.
It is a we program, and couples can go into recovery together.
Mm-hmm.
What I meant by my statement was that they can't work each other's program.
Exactly.
If I rely on you for my program, if I've got cancer and you're going to radiation therapy, I'm not getting any better.
Yes, great analogy. Yes.
I need to go to my treatments. You need to go to your treatments. And I know couples who have successfully, started and continued relationships in recovery, and oftentimes they will go to different meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
They don't sit in the same meeting together holding hands trying to, work each other's program for them. Encouraging each other is wonderful, but I don't think it's a good idea. And the reason I don't think it's a good idea is because most therapists and clinicians will tell you it's a bad idea.
Yes.
But I've also witnessed it over the years in recovery. I've watched it happen. I see the train is going to wreck, and I'm watching it unfold.
Yep. You can't work their program for them.
So what do people do when all of this happens? They fall into old habits, old behaviors kick in, and before you know it, your full-blown, recovery program is out the door and out the window. So what can we do to
prevent that?
Prevent this, what's the solution? How do we fix it? Well, identifying a word that I know we did a whole episode on triggers, and I think I said this in the episode on triggers. I really hate that word triggers.
Yeah.
The word trigger to me is like I was breathing, therefore I was drinking when I was using it. It really didn't matter. I mean, I drank and used all the time, whether life was going good, bad, or indifferent, whether I was really busy or really bored, all of that. So I get a little, triggered by the word triggers.
Right.
But the truth of the matter is there are certain triggers. If you find yourself having an emotional relapse, that's a trigger that something's going on. So we work our network. I imagine you have people that you call that you can talk to.
Yes.
I have people I can call and I can talk to. Some people have therapists. I've done therapy. I think you've done therapy, right? Mm-hmm. More than once?
For,
I've done it more than once.
30-something years or so.
Oh, just a tiny dip your toe in the pool kind of thing.
I'm a career in therapy person at this point, yeah.
Family members sometimes can either be a trigger or can be a support network.
Yes, choose wisely.
Choose wisely. Just because they're family doesn't mean that they need to be all up in your business.
Truth.
So, but having sober friends who have been through the same thing. I met a woman the other day that was dealing with an abusive relationship, and I mentioned a few names of people that she should talk to deal with that. And because you want to be able to relate. Another woman that's been in an abusive relationship might be able to help another woman that's been in an abusive relationship.
Yes.
What they're going through. So working that network and having that network established, like my sponsor knows most of everything that's going on in my life. Yeah. There should be at least one or two people that know what's going on in your life, so that when life gets lifey and it hits, that you don't have to fill them in for 2 hours on what's going on to get to the point. So that's important. And then having some sort of plan of action. Like for me, I go to more meetings when I feel like I'm emotionally relapsing.
Absolutely.
I try to dig into my program. I try to help somebody else because it gets me out of my own head.
Yes, it does.
So, and then let's talk about self-care. What do you do for self-care, Jillian? I know you have a few things that we have in common, as a matter of fact. What do you do for self-care?
I do love nature therapy. I haven't done enough of that lately. So, just getting out for walks. Specifically, I like being among the trees. And I just,
I dig that too.
I'm not quite the Lorax, but I've been known to hug a tree here or there. I love nature. And exercise too. I go to the gym. Ooh, what's my super self-care right now?
What's
roller skating.
Oh, really?
Yeah, oh yeah. I've rediscovered that in the last, just before COVID hit, I bought these sweet rainbow roller skates. Because I had gone.
Did they light up?
They should. No, there's these light up wheels, and I really want some. But they're different colored wheels. So I hadn't gone in probably 20 20 years. And I went with some friends. I'm like, wow, I forgot how much I love this. So then I get these sweet skates and start going, and then COVID hits and I didn't go for a while. But I've been skating pretty regularly again the last few months. And I'm telling you, it brings me so much joy. I'm like so blissful and euphoric when I'm out there skating. And it's just, and it's exercise, don't get me wrong, because you skate for a couple hours and you're burning a lot of calories, but it's just, there are a few things in this world that I love as much as that. Riding my bike, which I haven't been doing as much as I like, and dancing is something I used to do. So my favorite things as an adult, the things that kind of, that are transcendent for me, that really get me out of my head and into my body and just feeling good: roller skating, riding my bike, dancing, playing in the woods. I mean, so those are some of my self-care. Also connecting with, like, we mentioned connecting with people who are supportive. I'm very blessed to have some high value, supportive, loving, reciprocal relationships with friends and people through recovery as well. So those kind of my self-care things. You also enjoy nature. What else do you do for self-care?
Well, I will share your joy in being out in nature. When I am on a camping trip, I totally unwind and relax. I reset my entire brain structure by being out there in nature. So the other day I was having a stressful day, and I was just like, I need to get out of the house. The sun is shining. I'm looking out the window like a prisoner waiting to get out of jail. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just taking a break, and I'm going for a walk.
Yeah.
And I mean, you could put in a couple of miles in less than an hour easily enough. So, I mean, I went for a walk, and I saw this beautiful deer in the woods right here in my neighborhood.
Nice.
And I stared at this deer, and it was staring at me, and we just looked at each other for, 15 minutes.
Wow.
Staring
you had a
back
real
and
connection.
Forth. Yeah, we did. I thought the deer was going to come over and say hello and like lick my hand. Or something. It's like, no, I'm not a threat to you.
You're not Dr. Doolittle, but
no. But just being out in nature for me is good, to get some time to clear the head.
Yes.
Going for a hike, going for a walk, whatever. But also for me, getting enough sleep. If I need to take a nap, I'll take a nap.
Yeah.
Some people don't like naps, but I take naps. And you can always reset your day. If you're having one of those days where you're having the emotional relapse, you can reset your entire day by taking a little nap. It doesn't have to be 2 hours.
No.
It could be a quick 20-minute nap. It could be 30, 45 minutes, an hour, whatever you need. Take a nap and reset your day and wake up and start over again. And I find that I get more done than if I try to just,
power through it.
Oh, everybody's push through. We got to push through this. Sometimes pushing through is not the way to do it. It's kind of like Chinese handcuffs. Remember those?
Right. The more you
Where
struggle.
You put your finger, the more you struggle to get out of it, the tighter they become, and it doesn't work. So you got to relax, and then it works.
Yes.
So, and also eating a healthy diet for me. It's important that I eat foods that are not weighing me down. I've experimented with this for my body over the years. There are times when I need protein and I like a good steak, but there's other times when I, eat vegetables. A friend of mine turned me on to like oatmeal, flaxseed, raisins, do a little bowl of cereal, those kind of things. So eating healthy so that I'm not weighed down. It's amazing what nutrition and sleep will do for your body.
I'm glad you mentioned those two. Those are also two other things. I was just so focused on my roller skating that I got. But yeah, I mean, it's amazing how much, especially as we get older, just like a good night's sleep is transformative. Or naps. Naps are a fantastic little vacation. Yes, and eating well. And I do try to do those things too. Any other things that you want to mention?
I was going to talk about stress a minute because stress can be a big one for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I know it is for me. When I get stressed out, I become less effective, and then you get restless, irritable, discontent, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So what do you do to manage stress? What do you do for yourself?
I mean, it's really those same things that I mentioned as like my self-care. That's my way to counteract stress is to,
what if you can't get out and roller skate that afternoon?
Well, I can go for a walk. I can send a text to my sponsor. I can connect with somebody that way. I mean, there's always a way. Would I prefer to just go roller skating? Absolutely, but that's not That's not feasible. I mean, that is one upside to you being your own boss, is that you can just take a nice nature walk in the middle of your work day. I listen to really great podcasts like this one. It's another way I can find something, focused on that particular stressor, for example. No, but just, when I'm at the office, because I just stepping away from my desk, because I can get into that over-focused ADHD brain where, I'm just like, okay, just one more task. And I have to override my brain and say, no, what you need to do right now is walk away from your desk.
You just hit it on the head. The walk away for a brief moment. Because you can't tell your boss, oh, I'm going to go roller skating because I'm having a stressful day. Right. Well, I suppose you could, but then you might want to get your resume brushed up. But you can walk away from your desk a moment. Go get a cup of coffee, a drink of water. Take a brief walk outside to the front of the building or something, or wherever. Take pause in the moment. And I actually learned this from some people who I know who do yoga, doing breathing exercises. So take a walk away from your desk, go out to the front of the building, sit on a bench if there's a bench out there, or find a spot where it's quiet, you're not going to be disturbed, and just take 5 minutes to do a breathing exercise. And your body will change.
Yes.
You can kind of reduce the stress level as opposed to a pressure cooker getting ready to explode.
Yeah.
So that would be a practical thing to do.
Yes.
And then, of course, talking to somebody about it afterwards. I mean, what stressed you out in the first place? Is it something that you need to be working on? Serenity prayer, again, is a good barometer to use.
One. Yeah.
The courage to change the things I can, knowing when I can't. And
the wisdom to know the difference.
Amen to that. Avoiding high-risk situations if you can avoid it, if it's possible.
Yep.
Sometimes not going to the family function might be the best idea.
Yeah.
Sometimes not, going in and having the argument with your significant other. Sometimes not confronting your person at the workplace before you think about what the situation is in the big picture. Those kind of things, avoiding high-risk situations. Because, I mean, when things blow up, that's when people relapse.
Yeah.
And sometimes when things are going really good, really, really good, people relapse. And that is something that takes people, I don't know, sometimes years to get comfortable with peace and serenity and not be bored with it.
Truth. Yeah. That was my experience.
And then, of course, keeping yourself busy with good stuff, and good people.
Yeah.
Is helpful. I have to feel grateful.
A gratitude practice is huge for me.
Gratitude is an amazing release why is it that human beings tend to focus on what they don't have? They focus on the negative. People are always saying worst case scenario,
Scarcity mindset, focusing on the negative. Yeah.
Being grateful for what you do have instead of what you don't have.
Yes.
That's what I have to practice more often, and sit there with a pad and paper sometimes and write all the stuff I'm grateful for, and I don't just mean things.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, if you're committed to a program of recovery, whether it be from people, places, things, drugs, alcohol, sex, money, gambling, shopping, the list goes on. People can be addicted to a lot of things because life gets lifey.
It does get lifey.
It gets tough. Yeah.
Yes.
But if you're committed, then you're going to put all of these things into practice. You're going to be able to spot the red flags in recovery. Didn't we do an episode on that?
We did do one of those.
So, it's funny how all this stuff is sort of related together just a little bit.
It's all interconnected.
But if you're committed, and don't ever quit. I've seen people throw in the towel before, like, the miracle happens.
Yes.
They try it and they say it doesn't. I love people that say 12-step programs don't work. It's almost laughably funny because 12-step programs do work if you actually do the work.
Exactly.
They are proven by some. There's been research studies that have shown that 12-step programs work for recovery.
Yes.
So don't tell me it doesn't work if you've not worked all 12 steps over a period of time and you threw in the towel, when you were halfway through.
As they say, it works if you work it.
That's a true story. And don't ever quit, no matter how bad things seem to be.
Mm-hmm.
I guarantee, and this is going to sound so cliche, but it's the truth in my life at least, is that you'll look back on this 6 months from now,
mm-hmm.
or a year from now, or even 3 months from now. The time doesn't matter. You're going to look back on whatever it is, and it's not going to be so bad.
That's gospel truth right there. Because I remember, especially like after when my ex Nancy cheated, and I was in a pit of despair, and I was in such a low place, and it was a rock bottom. And I remember my sponsor just reassuring me that that it wouldn't always hurt, that it would get better, and it just didn't seem possible in that moment when I was in the midst of it, when I was in that storm. But I look at my life now. I mean, granted, it's been 8+ years now, but even like a year out from that point, or 6 months, if you can just hold on and keep trying to go to these tools, the solutions, whether it's walking away from your desk, focusing on what you're grateful for, connecting with a supportive person in your life, any number of things just to get you through that moment. Because sometimes even though recovery is very often a one day at a time, sometimes it's one moment at a time. I'm just going to be really real about that. There have been times where I'm like, I can't even fathom getting through this entire day.
Yes.
I have to get through this moment.
Yes. Yeah, that is so true. I agree with you 100%. It could be a moment at a time. Mm-hmm. Even if you're sober, you could be going through, going through hell. And the trick with going through hell is to go through it.
Keep going.
Through it. Keep running.
Yes.
When the room's on fire around you, keep moving.
Mm-hmm.
Don't sit there and stay in it. That you're 100% correct. Have gratitude. Use your systems. Don't ever throw in the towel and give up. Just fight through it, no matter how awful it gets. Mm-hmm. And that's easier said than done.
Right.
I don't think anybody does a perfect job at it, but
nope.
I would be willing to bet there's people that would help.
Yes.
So thank you, listeners, for joining in on this episode. I hope you found some of the information insightful.
Yes.
Helpful.
Hopeful.
We're hope dealers.
We are hope dealers. I love being a hope dealer.
I'm a hope dealer, yo.
We need T-shirts.
Yeah, well, hope dealer has been stolen so many times over. I heard it many years ago, and then it became a popular stolen phrase.
I feel like it's new to me, but...
No, it's become more common. I wanted to get some T-shirts made up that said hope dealers, and now they're all over the place. But it's the truth. We were just trying to deal some hope. Yes. And I'm sure there'll be some resources for you in the show notes. Mm-hmm. You do know that we have show notes, right, people? We have notes after every show that are in print format and links to resources that my co-host Jillian types up for every episode. Mm-hmm. So, please use those resources if you feel the need. Mm-hmm. To learn more information. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for this topic, Dom, and thank you, listeners, for joining.
Thanks, Jillian.
Have a great day.
Till next time on the Recovery Rebirth Podcast.